2024. Thank you, Brian. Welcome to the June 2024 CaRC Systems Facing Call. CaRC is an organization that advances the frontiers of research by improving the effectiveness of RCD professionals, including their career development and visibility and their ability to deliver services and resources for researchers. So that's right off the slide. We have other tracks, other calls during the course of a month: researcher facing, data facing, emerging centers, strategy, and policy. So take a look for those. You can join our Slack channel. If you're interested, there's also other working group opportunities. And if you notice in the call doc, there'll be some information about the upcoming PERC conference, including the student program, and a look for volunteers there. We are the system-facing group, and we could use an additional member or two for our steering committee, so I'll put that out there. If you're interested, you can contact one of us in the Slack channel or via email and let us know, and we could appreciate all the work we could get from people. So thank you very much. So let's get on to today's talk. So we're talking about Debian Linux. And we have two Debian developers here, including the lead developer, who is Andreas Tille from and he's a physicist by training, as are all good Linux users, as far as I'm concerned. And then we also have Dennis van Doek joining us, and they've both been using Linux since the late 90s. So I think, Andreas, you were going first. Why don't you take it away?
I'm fine with this, and I will share my screen. So since you said I'm the lead developer, well, funny enough, I feel not competent because I was elected as DPL, but since I'm working since 26 years on Debian, with mostly dedicated to scientific packages, and so yeah, I would have the same talk last year when I was not elected as DPL. So, well, you just became famous, but not so. Oh, can you see? No, I think I just need to share my screen again. Press the wrong button. So, can you see this presentation? Can you control?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I prepared a short talk about Debian GNU Linux in scientific research. I founded the Debian MADE project since I'm working in a medical institute in 2002, and also initiated the Debian Science Group. And I think I will explain a little bit what's Debian Science. By the way, this presentation contains a lot of links. If you want to have more details, you can click on this link. The presentation is online and you will find it. A pure blend is basically an assembly of packages inside Debian, which are included inside Debian, and this assembly is for a certain purpose. For instance, for science. Debian Science is insofar a specific blend because it's rather an umbrella for blends. We had growing Debian Astro and Debian Mars out of it because this is a topic you can focus on, so mathematics and astronomy, and so the science is just for those who did not really settle and want to create their own stuff. It's somehow kind of a virtual place where scientists in Debian can meet, and we are not competing somehow with other scientific blends. So the assembly of packages is not exclusive. So something that is used in Debian MADE for biology is used by the chemist or by some other people. So it's just a categorization for a certain purpose. We have some maintenance of common scientific tools like graphing stuff, data importers, and something like this, which is more generic. and it's somehow kind of an entry point for scientists who want to contribute. So if you want to join Debian, it's maybe a good idea to say hello on the Debian science mailing list, and people will guide you, hopefully kindly, where you can contribute. We have some other interesting teams for the topic of HPC. We have actually a Debian HPC team, which has a wiki with some information and a mailing list where you can show up. We have Debian Mass, which is also a blend. All these blends have a so-called task page. If you might have some time in the end, I can show you some examples, but you can also click on it. You will see what it is. It's more or less the so-called tasks or categories you can click into and see what packages are inside. And they have a mailing list. I also like to mention Debian Med because it's also related to HPC for bioinformatics and neuroimaging and something like this. And we have Debian PIN, which is for small particles, something like this. The organization of Debian Science is, well, how can you do some organization? It's more or less the communication channels. We have a mailing list, which is, you can post into the Debian mailing list mostly whenever you want to. Do not need to subscribe, which might be interesting if you are afraid to have too much mails. You can read the answers on the web interface. There's a web archive. So this is something nice to know. We have some common Salsa repository. Salsa is the Debian GitLab instance. So we have a GitLab project where all the repositories for the packages maintained by the Debian Science team reside. We have all this task of science in this blends web sentinel. As I said, you have the categorization in biology, chemistry, geography, whatever, data accreditation, plotting, and something like this. These are the categories, and these are contain some meta packages which depend from the actual packages that are solving this task. If you have questions about this, just interrupt me. It's perfectly fine. There's also some IRC channel. I personally don't use IRC very often, but it's a very common way to communicate in the Debian community. For me, the signal to noise ratio is not so good, but sometimes it's nice to show up there and have some quick information. And for sure, there is some page in the Debian wiki about Debian Science where you can also find some more information. Yeah, I'm very keen on mentoring on newcomers. So mentoring is, in my opinion, the most important thing to find new contributors. And so I established in the Debian Med project the so-called mentoring of the month. It's basically, I offer the time for 1 month for students where you can ask every questions, every detail, which might be to lower the hurdle to ask stupid questions. And so everything is possible, and we try to create a package of some software the student is interested in. For me, it's extremely important that the people are not working on Hello World, but just some package which is in the interest of this person, because this has the highest chance that the students will continue to work on this. I also created some effort sponsoring of blends to make people understand what blends means. This is sponsoring in Debian means you can do some packaging even if you are not a Debian developer, but you need some Debian developer who is checking your work, is doing the real upload, and so this is a sponsor. This could be me, and I'm doing this if people show that they understood the blends framework, how the signs are working, how the categorization is working, then I volunteer to spend my time into this. Actually, not while I'm working as Debian project leader, because I more or less stalled my packaging work, but I did so a couple of years ago. What else did I do for mentoring? Well, I did a couple of packaging workshops. One was on the Max Planck Institute of Kognitions- and Neurowissenschaften in Leipzig. It was in October 2006. I also did some mentoring on the Debian for Scientific Facilities Days at the ESRF, the Synchrotron in Grenoble, where we had some talks, and I made also the first what I called live packaging workshop. I also don't package Hello World, but there's an audience, and the audience said, "Oh, it would be so great if software XY would be inside Debian." And say, "Okay, then let's just do it." And I'm doing the packaging as if I would do this, for me, totally new software and wanted to get it into Debian, which is tricky because there are a lot of possible pitfalls, but my way of teaching is guiding the people through those pitfalls. So I trapped also in this, and the people see what communication channels can I use to work around this, what I'm doing, what sources of information will be done. And this was the first time I did it that way. I did a lot of these later on. I did also a packaging workshop at the Max Planck Digital Library in Munich in 2014. And later I did several live packaging workshops. I think even some are video recorded. I have a talks page, which I will link in the end, and there you can seek for, and then you see some videos of how I'm teaching the packaging. What's also interesting, when I did those packaging workshops on the Max Planck Institute, I was also paid for this. So in my opinion, it is good if the institutions see there is some value in free software. I'm not depending from it really, because have a day job which is not really connected to Debian, whatever. But it's, if institutions are willing to pay for this kind of education, then they are somehow honest about this topic. And so this was kind of interesting. It was always 2 days, and I liked it a lot because there were really interested people. And yeah, in the end, they probably did not contribute to Debian for long term, but I think they learned a lot and understood the principles and so on. So now I want to give you some slight overview about who is using Debian. Well, there is a list of Debian users which contains a lot of scientific institutions, those who told us that they are using Debian. Not everybody is doing so. Rather, a vast minority is telling us, we are using Debian, and we really don't know who is really using it. And so I'm just picking a few examples which I was told about since when I was preparing for this talk. I was asking on the mailing list, can you give me some examples? And I will now present you to these. There is, for instance, also a Max Planck Institute for Gravitational Physics in Hanover. They are running quite a large HTC cluster, and they call themselves the world's largest research institute, specializing in general relativity. Kind of interesting institute for physicists. And they have a lot of compute nodes and want to even increase more than double in this year, whatever happens. And they are using HD Condor for day job scheduling. To install the bar metal with a minimal OS, they are using FII. FII is fully automatically install of a Debian system. You have some server which provides netboot images, and you can very, very detailed specify how this system should look like, and then you switch on your bare metal computer, and after 5 minutes it looks as you want it to look. This is really nice. Why are they using Debian? They said many packages are available without third-party repositories. They have existing in-house knowledge for package building and tooling, and this is, in my opinion, the most important thing. Assume in your institute or whatever organization, there are a lot of very gifted, say, Fedora developers. I would say, then use Fedora, right? I do not do straight advertising for Debian. I think the in-house knowledge is very important. If you don't have any in-house knowledge at all, ask us if you want, if we can teach you. Actually, there's also a problem when using Debian, because commercial software usually does not officially support Debian. Officially means if you want to open a support ticket and you call, you pronounce the name Debian, the other side might put down the phone and will not answer you anymore. I've experienced this myself. I could, if I would have more time, I could tell you a little anecdote for with the Sun machine, but I think I continue here and we can come back to anecdotes later. This institution has some own Debian repositories, and I checked their bookworm repository, so the latest Debian stable version, and I was a little bit astonished to see that they are packaging Aptainer, which is a continuation of Singularity. So I once tried to do something inside Debian. It's not finished, but there was some work done, and they also did some work. So this is always my problem for me. Free software permits everybody to do everything, but maybe everybody should ask around somewhere for some work that is done and join forces, which did not happen here for whatever reasons. I don't know. They have also Basic 3, which is in Debian in the same version. They have CA certificate Java, which is in Debian in the later version. Maybe they have their reason. I haven't asked. I had no time to ask. So they have their own configuration for CMake and HD Condor for local purpose. I like this in a way because they provide their own files they need as a Debian package, which comes really handy. So if you want to install a huge cluster, you don't need to fiddle around with configuration, just install packages and you are done. And they have LAL, which I don't know, but this is obviously some software they have written themselves in their organization. I would recommend to better talk to Debian first, because before starting these repositories, I think we could have done Aptainer together. There's no real need for BZIP and CL certificates. Maybe Debian has some bugs and they should talk to us and can you fix these bugs, whatever. And what I also would really like if they would make LAL and whatever they have additional programs they have written in-house, if this would be some official Debian package, because it gets more testing, it gets more users, it gets more bug reports, more response. So if it's not really, really specific for this specific institute, I think if there are some users out there, just make an official package. This is, by the way, the reason why Debian has so many packages. Also in Debian Med, we have sometimes very low numbers of users, but we are maintaining it in official Debian because I think this is the best place where you can maintain packages. So Linux at CERN, I have some link about to some talk. They have some limited Debian support, but they usually rely on Red Hat-based systems, Red Hat, Alma Linux, and so. And there's anyway some mitigation about reducing the risk to rely only on one distributions. Maybe if the Red Hat contract ends in 2029, but then, and so there are people who are proposing to have some plan B, something like this. So CERN is not migrating to Debian, but some use cases for Debian exists, and they are considering some wider usage, if I understood this talk slides correctly. Yeah, the Wellcome Sanger Institute is a world-leading genomics research institute in Great Britain. They, when I met some of them in 2006, when the DebConf was in Edinburgh, they had 3 Debian developers as employees. I'm not sure if they are continued working there, but they has established Debian at Sanger. Somehow they moved to some CentOS because other academic HPC centers were using it, and so they wanted to stay compatible, but they moved away again because they were not happy about it, and they are now running Ubuntu, OpenStack, and Ceph. And yeah, Ubuntu is a Debian derivative. I do not want to judge about this, but Debian knowledge helps in any case. We have EDF, the French electricity producer and provider. The most supercomputers in use at EDF were running Debian until some point in time, about 2020. The problem is currently that those top sellers of supercomputers do not really support Debian, whatever. The problem in Debian is there is no company behind it. Ubuntu is fine. There's a company, and companies want to talk to companies. They do not want to talk to some volunteer organization. And I can understand this because specifically when looking at Debian project leader, we have nobody to talk to. What might be needed is that some company, which is not just a small company of 3 or 4 people, dedicates to official Debian support. This could be some interesting thing, but as long as this doesn't exist, you will have a problem if you want to have specific hardware from some specific seller. And so, yeah, you should keep this in mind when you are deciding about Debian or not. So the workstations of people in some departments are equipped with Debian or a very close derivative of Debian. It's like Google, no? I don't know if you know, but Google, if you are doing a web search, you are a Debian user, because Google hardware is running on Debian. They have their derivative, and they are supporting our conference and so on. So Debian is not. I have many friends here, not computer geeks, who never heard about Debian except of me, but the importance of Debian is absolutely not clear because we are kind of hidden amongst all this advertising noise, and Debian has no advertising. We have no people who should do this. The calculation in EDF are done with those software, with the software which is packaged, and these packages are maintained by the Debian Science or Debian Math team. Sometimes when people have to use Red Hat, they sneak in Debian by Singularity containers with Debian operating system in the back. Yeah, Elixir is a European life science infrastructure, which is a mix of so many organizations which are working in bioinformatics and life science. And we have established a strong cooperation with Debian Med, and they are somehow sponsoring our sprints and so, and we are invited to their conferences. So besides the fact that they are using Debian packages, they are also using the metadata we have for classification. Debian has an ultimate Debian database, which is a database of all meta information, and you can do SQL queries about all this metadata. Finally, we have Institute of Neurosciences and Medicine. They have a cluster running Debian. There's a publication which I've linked to. And as a general hint for scientists and publication, in my opinion, each publication should be accompanied by some container that can do the data processing, which is reproducible even years later, at least. I hope so. What advantages I see inside using Debian, which is my last part of this talk. If you have Debian, you do not should consider it as a finished product, but you can influence. You can add packages. You can ask for changes in packages. You can talk to the maintainers how this can be enhanced. So this is something. Some huge advantage. I consider this is the main reason why I'm using Debian, because I have influence on the system itself. So you can turn Debian into something that fits your needs, which I actually did for my institute. I added thousands of bioinformatics packages, which would not be in Debian otherwise. And I formed a team around it. I didn't do it alone, but this is something we crafted Debian to the leading distribution for bioinformatics. And Debian developers are happy to support you if you have questions. We can join forces with upstream, which is also quite an advantage. For instance, I started this Mentoring of the Month project to package FIS GTM, which is a MUMS database. It was so complex, I had no idea about it. And so I talked with upstream and we did something together. This guy who were working together with, the first student, had the knowledge about the program, and I had the knowledge about packaging. We were pooling our knowledge, and so it worked. Similar with HT Condor. Tim Tyson is upstream of HT Condor, and he finally managed, with my help, to bring the HT Condor package into shape again. It is for a long time in Debian, but it was totally broken, and now it's working again. And you can have a look in our discussion to see how it works. Finally, with Debian, you have reproducibility. We have reproducible builds. We have snapshots of every release Debian package. So you can go back in time, download the package you used 10 years ago and use it again. And this is a good way to establish reproducible containers, and you have some guarantee your container still builds in future. Yeah, you know, this is theory, might work, might not work. Okay, so this was my talk. If you have any questions, the slides are available. You can also seek for Andreas Tille talks, do a web search, and then you find my talks page where you find more, and even this talk and the presentation you have seen. Any questions?
Great. Well, thank you. Dennis, while we wait for you to take over the screen, I do have a question. In terms of, you said you were paid by the Max Planck Institute at the time.
Yeah.
Is that, did you convince them to do that, or had they already been doing that at the time?
No, they asked me, can you do this workshop And then I said, yes, I can do so. And then they asked me, are you happy with amount of money? And yes, I was happy with that amount of money. Yeah, it
Because you would
worked
have
like
done it
this.
for free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we do have in the United States, Argonne National Lab has had a history of doing that same thing, is
Mm.
paying people to develop on Linux.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. Is there anybody else has a question, or we can hold some of them till the end, or just unmute yourself and speak up? Okay. If not, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Okay, Jim, thanks. And thanks for the invitation to talk here. I do apologize for having the tail end of a cold, so my voice may be a little bit froggy, and I may go into a bout of coughing at some point, but I've got a glass of water here to help out. Yeah, I was asked to give this talk based on a talk I gave at the HAPIX workshop, which you may not be familiar with. Which is sort of a get-together of people in the high-energy physics field for computing. And this has been modified and adapted and extended based on experience. So I think I have to add a bit of background to that because I think most people are not familiar with what we are and what we do. Just a bit about the lab I'm coming from very quickly. Nikhef is a small-ish lab. We are the Dutch National Institute for High Energy Physics, subatomic physics nowadays. And while a moped here in the street is driving away. We're involved in many of the Large Hadron Collider experiments at CERN, but also in other fields, mostly to do with high energies at sort of the smallest things at the highest energy scales. So neutrino experiments, dark matter, and gravitational waves. But we provide contributions there in technical expertise, actually building equipment and instrumentation, theory, and also computing. And that's my field, of course. Yeah, we started this grid computing adventure way back in about 2000. I joined Nikhef in 2005, so this was a few years before I even joined. But that was given by the needs of this Large Hadron Collider experiments that were being built, and I started doing sort of back of the envelope calculations of how many compute cycles were needed for the analysis, and they figured out that would be almost, I'm paraphrasing here, choosing between doing the computing or having warm houses in Geneva because it would draw so much power and energy. So they came up with a plan to spread that computation around the world, and optic fiber cable made it possible. In those days, it was still fairly newish, but the idea had grown that you could share computing across the world. And Nikhef was one of the labs that said, okay, sure, we'll join in, we'll provide some computation there, and it started building from there. Within Europe, this was fed by a number of projects. And development went on, I think, until 2012. By that time, we had established a nice, sort of stable infrastructure for that. It is, as a grid goes, focused on high throughput rather than high performance. So if most of you people here are maybe from the high performance field rather than high throughput, the difference is easily understood by thinking delivery truck versus a race car. So we're not about doing the fastest possible computations, but more like getting the most events through the system over time. But we've been focusing also on other sciences and welcoming other sciences because they, well, they give some justification to having such an expensive piece of equipment. And if you only did it for one experiment, that would be quite expensive. But by making it more generic and inviting other sciences and science fields, that was that will welcome other fields to come on and share that as well. Would be a great justification to the people who fund this stuff. So it's still driven mostly by CERN, CERN's WLCG, the Worldwide Large Hadron Collider Grid. And it's been, and this is the focus, I think, of the talk, mostly run on Red Hat Enterprise Linux platform. So, and we were always content to have a sort of a stable enterprisey Linux distribution to run that and not really have to worry too much about the platform itself. And we got it basically for free, because with Linux being open source software and forcing that sharing of your source code, it was quite easy for some rebuilders to get that build script off of Red Hat and do it again and rebuild it and spread it for free. Now, that didn't make Red Hat any money, but they weren't apparently too concerned about it, at least not in the beginning. So we've been doing that since version 3, and the ecosystem then looked like, well, there was Scientific Linux, which was sort of a derivative, and then there was the flavor that was Scientific Linux CERN, slightly off with some packaging, and there was CentOS, which was more true to form, true to the origin. And all the way up to version 7, which came out, I think, in 2014, this worked. But by then the ecosystem had shrunk considerably, and the Scientific Linuxes had given up, and it was just CentOS left, and it was owned by Red Hat. So, in hindsight, a big red flag there. Monoculture is never a good thing, and if something goes wrong, things tend to go wrong very, very quickly. Yeah, for context, this is our little data center. It's a little room in our building. We do have a bigger data floor, but that's dedicated to the Internet Exchange that we sit on top of because of our long history with computing and internet in the Netherlands. And we have one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Internet Exchange points in the Netherlands. But that's a commercial, semi-commercial operation that actually helps fund some of the other work that we do. And this is part of our old library. So it's just a 400 kilowatt room that we operate. And we are sort of part of the Netherlands tier 1 for Atlas for one of the experiments at CERN. And as well as sort of the Dutch national infrastructure where we get all the other sciences on board. So that's a bit of the background. We do all of this with a lot of automation, and basically for this sort of grid part of it, it's a 3-person team. So the rest of the IT at Nikhef is a bit more people, but they also have to manage all the other one-off systems. Now here you can see a bit of live, close to live data of what we are currently running on the grid end. And well, you can see the considerable share that's given to the LHCb, Atlas, and Alice. But there's also a portion here for LIGO, and the others. Well, the others take up a bit of that. Not in this picture. But yeah, one thing that you may notice if you come from, say, the HPC world or cluster computing at all, is that this looks pretty full. And yes, that's what you get when you have shared resources around the world, where you sort of give your experiments access to many different operation centers, and operation centers get their work from many other places. You tend to get very full over time. So we are running almost 100% full always, which is a good thing. Okay, so let's switch tracks and focus on the problem here. The problem was that Red Hat basically dismantled CentOS last year. They said, okay, it's done. We're not going to use CentOS anymore as a sort of a downstream rebuild of our enterprise version. We are going to consider it as CentOS streams, and that's going to be upstream from us, sort of more in an experimental capacity. And that was no good. So others have stepped in to fill that void. Rocky Linux, Alma Linux, and I don't want to mention Oracle really. But the thing is, Red Hat seems to actively want to discourage this nowadays. They feel like they're losing money on this maybe, and they don't really like the rebuilding effort. So there's some pressure on the rebuilders to keep this effort going. Now, it's yeah, this is a bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it may all well go right. And as Andreas has mentioned, CERN, for instance, has well, they consider Debian to be their sort of fallback or backup option or plan B. They seem to be not too concerned, but they also have a long-term contract with Red Hat currently to have basically infinite licenses. And that's not what we have. We don't have any license for Red Hat. So what is the way out? Well, the plan for now was to go to something else, and that something else has become Debian. That's not something entirely new. I'm actually a long-term Debian user and maintainer of packages. And actually some of my colleagues also are Debian aficionados. So it was kind of a natural choice. There's been for the longest time sort of this idea that it's not a viable alternative. And factors that were always named were, well, hardware vendor support. I think Andreas mentioned that, yeah. Hardware vendors don't typically label their equipment like works with Debian, although in practice it does. So not too much concern there. The release cycle is unpredictable because Debian releases come out whenever they're ready, and there's not really very predictable cycle there. Although in practice, it seems to come out sort of every year and a half. Then there's the idea that support for all the releases is not guaranteed and not too long, so you're basically forced to follow the cycle of updates.
Excuse me, could you quantify long in terms of years?
Yeah, I can. So CentOS 7 that we're now saying goodbye to has been supported for 10 years.
Okay.
It's both a blessing and a burden, because the burden is we've been sitting back on our sort of laurels for 10 years, like, oh, no problem here. This is supported for 10 years. We don't have to do anything. And now suddenly we have to do something. So a bit of a, if you get more into a routine of upgrading, this would perhaps not be such a problem right now. And lastly, I suppose, yeah, if you have to support more than one platform, that is a bit of an additional burden for your developers and packagers as well. So I don't consider that to be too great of a burden, to be honest. Now, I think there's some reasons why Debian would be a great choice, and it's the fact that many system administrators already know it and sometimes even prefer it. This is all personal, my personal view of it, by the way, may be different in different places, but this is what I see. We don't have a dependency on entities that are driven by shareholder value. I think that's great. And it actually has a proven track record of being extremely stable and excellent for security response times. And the idea that you can upgrade in place instead of doing a reinstall for some types of systems seems to be a great boon as well. So our plan became simply to port our system to Elma Linux 9 for anything that the user faces, because users were very much tied to a Red Hat-like platform based on what software they were using. But for anything that didn't face the user, we would use Debian. I'll go very quickly over. These were some contributions for the slides that came from colleagues from the sort of the non-HTC part of Nikhef IT, and they faced even bigger problems because they had less automation. But yeah, one of the things that came up was like, we have to do all these upgrades and the systems have to keep on working. Help, how do we do this? And in the end, it turned out to be more of a management issue and a management hassle than really a technical problem. So I'll skip over this a little bit quickly. Maybe the lesson to take away from this is that if you're facing a large-scale upgrades process in your organization, take care that management is on top of it and make sure that they get the right amount of capacity in for doing the work, because all the other work still needs to keep going. None of this is specific to Debian, by the way. I could say that you'd face issues like PHP version differences even when you upgrade to Elma 9. And CentOS 7 is by now so old that anything you upgrade to will be too new and break many things. So the administrator who shared these last points with me for the presentation at Hapix is now actually very happy because he got things done. So that was the happy end. I replaced the slide where he was still sort of in the in the mud trying to get work done, but he's now very happy. So on our side, I say our side, it's the HCC part, the three-person team. We do have standardized configuration for a while. We actually use a system called SaltStack. That works very well. We have many nodes, but fewer different variants of nodes. That's also easier. And what we're doing is moving away from Torque at the same time. So we took on maybe a bit more work than was really warranted in that short amount of time. We wanted to say goodbye to the Torque batch system that was ancient and no longer supported, and move to HT Condor. We actually know the Condor developers quite well. They're based in Wisconsin, and we're hosting the next HT Condor workshop in Europe. So the short-term plan is to move the grid computing cluster to Alma Linux 9 on Torque for the moment, because we're really, by next week, we should be finishing the upgrades, and move the local cluster to HT Condor. This is already in progress, almost finished. And that can be done on Debian. That this is actually one of the, for me, more surprising elements of it. Like we can run a high throughput system on Debian, because all the jobs that users run are containerized, and they don't even see it. They don't see the base OS. So they have a choice of whatever flavor of enterprise Linux they want, or even bring their own container. And well, maybe not a revelation for other people, but for me, this was a completely different paradigm. So we're now actively pressing users to move over with a carrot and stick tactic. We're shrinking the capacity on the old cluster that was going to be turned off, and increasing the capacity on the new cluster. And well, that seems to work reasonably well. Our long-term plan is to move the grid cluster to HT Condor as well. And well, we're hosting the next workshop, so please come if you like HT Condor, or want to have an excuse to come to Amsterdam. Finally, and on reflection, so why did we do so many things, and why didn't we just go to Alma Linux 9? And I think we would have faced problems if we just went to Alma 9 as well, because all the legacy software needed to be ported, and that was going to be a hassle anyway. So I think it was warranted to do it. And finally, I think it's great to invest in the system that we use. We use them for free. We don't pay for them, but we should be contributing and giving back. So that was my personal plan to become more involved in it, and to be helpful in some way. And I decided to become also a Debian developer, which I announced in March during the HAPEX workshop. Yeah, I put some time in making a nice build system, and do some packaging work and tying it all together. And the intent to become a Debian developer worked out to be quite well. And last month I was minted as an official uploading developer. So that was a good process to go through. I wouldn't say that it's for everybody. I think you can become very helpful in the project even without being a developer. You can just file bug reports, or help with documentation, or join any one of the many teams and just help out if you see problems. So I think that was my last slide, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Dennis. Any questions for Dennis or Andreas?
I want to applaud Dennis for becoming a Debian developer, but I fully agree that you can do so many things without being a developer. So just join us and then see if it's needed to really upload, or if there are other interesting tasks.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, Andreas, I think what you said about the mentoring is so important. And that's really a great thing that Debian does. Yeah.
I've also more explicit talks just about mentoring. And last year at DebConf, it's also on my talks page, where I go a bit more into detail. And I think this is a big strength we can use in science because we somehow speak the same language, and yeah, taking people on their hand with this focus on their own problems. This is very important.
Great. If there's nobody else, I had a question about you talked about vendors not having official support for Debian. And do you have an advocacy group within the organization to kind of work with the vendors, say, could you support this because so many of our national labs are using this version of Linux?
Is this directed to me?
Either of you.
Well, we do have some pressure on the vendors. I think especially in networking hardware, but also in computing hardware, because we tend to have some people talking to the vendors to get the latest and greatest stuff, and we actually work with them to make things work. We have some beta hardware sometimes in our lab. It's the advantage of being a small lab with close ties to the hardware vendors, that we can serve as a test bed for them as well, because we have so many strange workflows coming through our systems from scientists who do the strangest things that they never see coming through their CPUs. That's actually useful for them. So we sometimes use this to have a little bit of pressure on them to help us out, but no official word about supporting this or that.
Well, it's really complicated because I think Lenovo is supporting Debian, so it might be easier to get something with Lenovo, so laptops or so. But this is not very interesting for the HPC thing. I come back to the anecdote I mentioned. It was 20 years ago in my institute. This was basically Windows dominated, and I had the option to buy a computer. I thought, well, let's buy a Spark from Sun, because they never can install Windows on it, whatever they want to do. And then this Spark came, I installed Debian, which worked without any problem. After 1 month, it crashed. And I called the support. You are using Debian. This is not supported. And full stop. Well, that's it. So what can I do? Yeah, install this Sun OS or Solaris. Install Solaris. I did so. Run the computer a little bit, and it crashed as well. And then the support, blah, blah, blah. And it took a long time. And finally, it turned out that some memory was broken. And in the Linux kernel log, this was mentioned somewhere, some memory problem, but not in Solaris log. So the support could have had an easier time when relying on Linux, reading the log completely instead of their Solaris stuff. So, but hey, vendors say this is what we support to limit their work. They just limit their workload. We support A, B, but not C, D, E, F. And Debian is not A or B.
Understood. Yes.
Yeah, they need to certify their platforms, of course. So I understand that as well. I know that some of the internal developer labs for some of the vendors, these engineers also run Linux on everything. So the first tests that are done on new CPUs are actually done on Linux. So I wouldn't be surprised that there's a lot of Debian there as well.
Great. Hey, we have a question in the chat. Is there any question? Is there any chance that Debian will support bare metal provisioning?
For sure, there's a chance, but someone had to do it.
That's the thing, yes. Because right now, what prevents us from switching to Debian or derivative like Ubuntu is that really, if you want to provision something, there is nothing comparable to Red Hat Kickstart in the Debian world.
Oh, there is. There's pre-seed. Well,
okay.
we
there is FI, there is
a
pre-seed.
Debian machine in 5 minutes. It works terrific. So
okay, yes. Yeah, I just misunderstood. Sure, as you are using it, and FII, as I mentioned, it is very, very frequently used. So you just want to have a defined installation on your bare metal. right? Or what is?
Well, the way Red Hat does it, it has Kickstart, which is really full-fledged non-image based bare metal installation. So you can't have image-based installation of anything like with Phi, but having OS specific thing precede, yes, but it's kind of still harder to deal with for HPC machine, I think.
I don't know Kickstart, right? So I'm not sure if FII is the correct answer, but it is not image based. It's profile based. You give them some profile and say the hard disk should be partitioned in this or that way, and you have different profiles, and then all computers are installed in the profile you want, and it's extremely fast if you have a local mirror and you don't have images.
If you care, I could share my my setup with you. Then we do both kickstarts for Red Hat systems and pre-seed for Debian from a system called Cobbler, which is a sort of somewhat older provisioning system. Looks a bit like, what can you compare it with, 4man or so? There's some other systems similar to that.
Yes.
If you care about it, I could share my setup with you.
Could you put that in the call doc or send that to Matt and he'll put it in the call doc? That'd be great, Dennis. We're running up right against the top of the hour, so I'd like to thank Dennis and Andreas for joining us and talking about Debian Unix or Debian Linux for scientific computing. And just a reminder that next month our call would be scheduled right during the PERC conference, so we're not having a call next month, but look for us to rejoin the rotation in August, and we'll see you then. Okay, Matthew, you had a question? Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure to speak